Kansas City, Kansas. A meeting of the Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee. This will be followed by a meeting of the Economic Development and Finance Standing Committee.
And Community Development Standing Committee. Public comment is welcome on any item that is before the committee this evening. If you'd wish to make a comment, you'd get our attention. You'd come to the podium in the center of the room and have 3 minutes to make your comment. We do ask that anyone who speaks tonight please speak as directly as possible into a microphone for accurate broadcast and recording purposes. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Walters.
Here.
Murguia. Townsend.
Here.
Burrows.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here. There are no revisions that I'm aware of to tonight's agenda, so our first order of business is to approve our standing committee minutes from our meeting of January 16, 2018. There's a motion and a second to approve as submitted. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Those minutes are approved as submitted, which takes us to our committee agenda. Item number one, well, actually all the items on our committee agenda tonight are land bank business, so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Slaughter.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners.
Evening.
We'll get started. Got quite a eventful evening for you guys tonight. The first thing we're going to talk about is a transfer to the land bank. It's 3850 Bell Crossing Drive. It's currently in the ownership of the city of KCK. And the property we're going to talk about here is shaded in green for you. The applicant is the owner, or the eventual applicant, if approved tonight, we'll have the application as well, of 3860, which is this area of land right here to the north. If approved and then approved for the land bank application, the applicant has agreed to maintain the right-of-way that's located through here. And by that, what we mean is, you know, keep it open, keep it free of debris, keep the trees kind of trimmed, help out as much as she can. Then currently right now, both properties are zone R1. So she would start the process of getting both of these zoned to agriculture. And then once that's done, then we would allow her to combine the properties, but not before both of them are of the same distinction. Her plans for it is to add some livestock there. She has some youth learning programs she wants to do, and then just preserve the wildlife, the grasses and stuff. The applicant, Ms. Moore, is also here in attendance if you have any questions for her. So, you know, our request would be to go ahead and approve the transfer to the land bank, and then if that's approved, we'll present our application for the property as well.
Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Do you know how the city came to own that land?
We did some looking into that, and I want to say it was,
I was just curious.
I want to say we purchased it somehow or got a hold of it sometime in the 80s, so it's been in our possession for some time.
And just for everybody's benefit here, we are still in the process of cleaning up a lot of parcels that historically have been in the name of the city of Kansas City, Kansas, or the Board of Commissioners, and had never have gone actually formally into the land bank. So we've been in the process. Mr. Slaughter brings a batch, it seems, every meeting that we are transferring in. And this is one of those parcels that we have actually had in our possession for a while, just not formally in the land bank, which is why it has to come into the land bank first before it can go out from there. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have some questions if the applicant is here. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, my name is Olivia Moore. My address is 5029 Haskell Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas, 66104.
Okay, good afternoon, or good evening, Ms. Moore. And maybe staff would also have the answers to some of these. The land that you currently own, is that zoned, do we know, for the use of livestock now?
The land that I currently own is zoned R1 residential, but it is over 5 acres.
Okay, I'm not sure I heard that. The property that you currently own?
Yes. The land bank, or I should speak ahead of myself, the city property here is roughly about 20 acres, and I believe Ms. Moore's is about 10? Okay. So for livestock, the key number or any kind of farming type stuff is 5 acres, so she would definitely have more than that once combined. But currently, both properties are zoned R1 residential, and the goal, if approved, would be to get them both zoned agriculture.
Okay, but the property she currently owns, is that zoned for agricultural use? Can you put livestock on it now?
Not without a special use permit, and
Okay.
I think over 5 acres, you can use it for agriculture.
Okay, so currently there's no livestock there, it's not zoned for that use. What is your plan? What type of livestock are you planning on bringing in, and what's your intended purpose for this?
That will be lots of poultry, ducks, chickens, turkeys, in addition to horses and potentially cows and goats.
And the purpose for that menagerie?
Well, I would be using these animals to produce high quality and nutrient dense foods because, as you know, the Northeast area is a food desert. I would also be using this outdoor space as a learning lab for youth to come and have an opportunity to see what agriculture looks like in their hometown.
Okay, that sounds good, but I'm gonna tell you, I have had in the last year and a half a lot of complaints about a lot of livestock and chickens and turkeys and all that, and some other things that cropped up that we didn't know were there. So that
Well, I assure you that they'll be well taken care of. I do have a bachelor's degree in animal science from the Kansas State University.
okay, but my concern is what the concerns of your other neighbors around there might be. As well as, I would expect you look like a responsible person, but my concern is for the other neighbors there. And currently there is no livestock there.
Currently, there is livestock there.
Ooh, okay, well, that's what I asked before. What is that? What's there now?
There are chickens, ducks, horses.
And how many do you have of each?
4 horses, 20 chickens, 20 ducks.
20 chickens. Yeah, okay, I need somebody from planning and zoning. Yeah, how many can you have without a special use permit?
I don't know exactly how many, Commissioner, but when it's R1, it has to be 5 acres, and you have to have a house on the property. Since it's R1, she has to change it to AG, because her home is somewhere else. So she'll combine that AG, make that into AG, and she can go there and have her livestock on the property. She has outbuildings on there already.
She has what?
Outbuildings, shelter, and I think you had water as well for the animals.
Here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to have this held over for further investigation of what's there already. Are we in compliance with any special permits that may be needed, may not be needed? Just don't have all the information that I'd like to have before that. Can we do that? That would be mine.
Second that.
So there's a motion to hold over until we have more information regarding the special use permits and any necessary planning issues that haven't been brought forward, seconded by Commissioner Walters.
Right.
Any further discussion on this item?
I'd like to make one note about
Yes,
the
ma'am.
purchase of the property. The city acquired this parcel in 1928.
Thank you so much. So the motion that is before us tonight is to hold over consideration of transferring this into the land bank to be transferred back out until we have more information about necessary permits and any planning issues that need to be addressed.
And what I'll do, Mr. Chairman, is to follow up with an email to Mr. Slaughter with a copy to planning and zoning, asking specifically what my questions are and concerns, so we can get those answers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore.
All right. So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion among the committee? Any further discussion from members in attendance? Roll call, please.
Roll call. Walters.
Aye.
Townsend. Burrows.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye. Give Mr. Slaughter a moment to get back up here. That takes us to, well, I guess this is now 2 applications.
2 applications tonight, yes. So the first is a yard extension application for 3043 South 37th, as shaded in red. The applicant is outlined here at black at 3040 South 36th. We have a property acquisition for, oh, this slide is wrong, I apologize. The applicant is not shaded here. The applicant is here. That's why it's a property acquisition, being that the property is not adjacent to each other. The applicant is here at 3223 Faro, and then this is the land bank property right here at 3300 Faro. And then the last one was going to be the one we just discussed.
So in terms of the agenda, the 3850 Bell Crossing Drive has been removed as an application and will come back in the future. And so,
Or we could just pull it, and then we'll, again, if you want to not vote on it, we can just pull it, or if you want to,
we'll pull that one, and it will come back when the transfer to the land bank comes back.
correct, okay.
So we have 2 properties, South 37th and Faro Avenue. Any questions, any comments, or is there a motion on those properties?
Move to approve.
Second.
It's a motion and a second to approve both of those properties. Any further discussion from the committee or anyone in attendance? Roll call, please.
Roll call. Walters.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye. That takes us to item number 2 on the committee agenda tonight, which is a recommendation regarding land bank policy updates. Mr. Slaughter.
Thank you. We've had numerous discussions over the years about why are we accepting donations, or what's kind of the thought process behind it. So we have tonight a list of, well, if you want to call it a criteria, or kind of some specifics that an applicant would have to meet, or a requester would have to meet before we would even bring it to the body for approval. So I'll go through those, and then if there's any questions as we go through, please let me know.
I actually have a question before you even start, because up in the preamble it says, Wyandotte County Land Bank will only present requests to the Board of Trustees for approval when the following conditions are met. Is this an and situation where all of these conditions have to be met?
No, these are kind of presented. There may be some where multiple are met, but we figure at least if one of these are met, then we will present it to you. If we, through the discussion, feel that you need to have more,
I just think in terms of the clarity of the revisions, we might want to come up with some wording that specifies that at least one of these must be met. Because as I read it, it was, these are met, and I looked at all. And I didn't think that was the case.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, we will clarify that. So then we can just, if you want, we can just have a discussion on how we have it, and if we have to bring it back, we can bring it back. Okay. Okay. The first one would be is if we could provide evidence that the owner has maybe been cited for a code violation that they can't remedy, or just doesn't have the resources to take care of the property anymore. If we have a target area in place, we would like to have the ability to possibly gain that property for strategic advantage for possible development. If we have an agreement for a vacant lot with the adjacent owner that they would be willing to take that property on if it came into the land bank, we'd like to consider that. Any house that would be, we feel, is a candidate for the rehab program, we would like to have the ability, if certain criteria were met, meaning there's no financial obligation still on the property, we'd like to be able to request that. And that also would be for a vacant lot that would be next to a rehab property that might expand property for the rehabber when they go to sell or rent the property. If a property needs to be demoed, but yet the city, the unified government, or the city of Bonner, the city of Edwardsville agrees to pay for the demo of that property, then we feel that's something we could present to you guys. Any property with environmental conditions or something that's going to be more than just a normal demo or takedown, we would like to make sure that they have the ability to possibly help us out with the funding of that. We may require, especially when it comes to houses, if they have a clear and marketable title, we would definitely feel that that's an advantage for us. This one here is something that I'm pretty strong on. If a property is one to be donated, but maybe there's still someone in there, or they feel there's squatters in there, that would be something that I would probably not want to bring before you guys, but we just wanted to list that too for a conversation's sake. There's extra steps that have to be turned around and taken as far as filing motions and getting the sheriff's department for an eviction. It's doable, but it's just not necessarily one of the priorities for us. We figured that, you know, it's been spoken before in many meetings about not using the donation as a way to be like a tax write-off, so we thought we'd add that language in there too. So I believe that's the last one. Yep. So those are it. We can start the conversation if you want. If there's any also proposed changes, we're more than happy to listen to those now.
So I do have, and then we'll turn it over because I'm sure other members of the committee will also have. My first suggestion would be up at the top in the preamble. Only presents request to the Board of Trustees for approval when, and strike the following conditions are met, and replace it with when one or more of the following conditions are met. So the goes to one or more of, would be my suggestion. My other suggestion would be that letter, wait a minute, H, yeah, you're right. Letter H is an exception to the rule, and so it's not really one of the criteria on which we would accept. It's the
yeah, I kind of wrote that backwards a little bit, so we can remove that and just have that be a staple that we deal with until we're in a position to present you a house that is vacant and unoccupied. It's probably the better way to state that. So,
and then on letter I. So this is one we've had conversations about before, where someone comes in and says, you know, there are 13 years of back taxes on this and I want to donate it to you, and it's a way of effectively absolving themselves of the tax liability on it. Does shall not determine donation for value of the purpose of tax benefits, how does that fit with I've heard concern expressed about people coming in and dropping off a property, saying, here, I can't pay for it, you guys take it. How does that last bullet point help us address that particular issue? And this is as much for the committee as it is for you. At that point, I've kind of thrown out all my initial thoughts on this and absolutely open it up to the rest of the committee or those in attendance for further discussion.
Well, I have a question. The item that raised my attention was the adverse environmental conditions. And it's just a little bit of an alarm that we, the land bank, would accept property that was contaminated somehow and would expose us to cleanup costs and or other disposition costs that I think we would be very cautious. I would think we would want to be very cautious before we accepted that, even though if we didn't accept it, it probably would just stay in our community as a contaminated property.
Probably, yeah.
But I don't know what my comment is necessarily, other than to say acceptance of environmentally contaminated properties need extra scrutiny.
Okay.
Do we have a contract partner that we utilize to evaluate areas of concern that we may consider contaminant? Somebody might do, somebody may go in and identify asbestos. Do we have somebody we contract with to give us a value of what it would take to remediate that property?
I mean, other than what we kind of have through our demo department, right now, currently, take the houses we get in the rehab program. I mean, really, it's just kind of up to me and Mr. Brockman to make that determination. But we've already accepted them through the rehab program that they're going to come to us anyway. You know, I think another way to look at this point would be a commercial property that someone may, just like you said, Commissioner, may want to walk away and feel that this is maybe the easy way out. Part of what we were saying or trying to state in this is, you know, unless we failed, we didn't want to just take it and then now what do we do or how do we do with it? So I think the whole point would be is there would either be an internal or external stream that could possibly help us remedy that situation, but only if we have that identified would we then bring it forward. If we couldn't identify that and we knew there was a property in these type of state, more than likely we're going to want to hold until we definitely know whether this is something that we could remedy or not. Instead of just bringing you an address and saying, here's another request, and then getting into it and then realizing that, hey, this is going to have some issues and stuff. So from the land bank perspective, no, we don't contract with stuff. I think there's other resources within the unified government that we could probably ask for assistance on. But I mean, hopefully that answers your question, Commissioner.
So in the past, we had these Superfund dollars that were available for vacated service stations, tank remediation. But on a local level, when people walk away from areas of potential contamination like that, and they end up in our possession, there's a tremendous cost to that remediation, and those properties sit for an extended period of time. Do we do any kind of sampling to see what degree the contamination is? Do we have a fund set in place on a local level that would help remediate the property, or do we leave that up to a potential vendor who may want to purchase the property and the cost transfers to them?
You know, the only thing that comes to mind is we do have a commercial property at 2900 Brown. It's the old laundromat that I think Commissioner Townsend, we've spoken about before. And we're still evaluating an offer we've received from one of our rehabbers. And I think we are looking at it from the position that it would be up to the rehabber to go out and procure those services to remedy that as part of their offer, their bid for the property. So, you know, I understand what you're saying, because I think that's the last thing we want to do, especially with any kind of structure, is just have it sit, other than we haven't had anybody express any interest in taking that project on. But again, we're hopefully also still identifying these before they come to you guys. And if we do bring them, then we hope to also have in place to say, here's how we feel this is going to be remedied, whether it's something that would come from us or from an outside source through the rehabber and stuff.
To also answer your question, I'm not aware of any dollars we have set aside in the budget for any sort of environmental remediation. So if the purchaser can't take the responsibility for that, then it'd have to come from some other third party, as far as I am aware. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you. I'll pick up with that same point about the environmental issue. So you mentioned an external stream with regard to remediation. So the plan is, if there was a piece of property targeted, before you would come to us requesting it be admitted to the land bank, you'd have the resolution.
That's our plan, or what we're thinking here with this point.
And the remediation would occur, the thought is the remediation would recur prior to a vote to accept it into the land bank, or what?
You know, again, right now, the way we have dealt with this, especially this one property on Brown, it would be something that we would probably write into the agreement with the rehabber with the condition, if it was not met, then that would probably give us the grounds to start the process to take the property back.
Okay, because when I saw it, the first thing I thought about, okay, here comes another issue for budget session. And I don't think any of us really wanted to take that on for this. Well, I won't speak for the others, but I'll leave it at, I bet a lot of bells rang with that thought too, budget. So, Commissioner McKiernan also addressed already the addition I would like to see in the wording, so that it's clear that some, all, multiple, that these criteria are in the conjunctive, at least so many. That was one issue targeted. Item number 2, where it says the property is located in an area targeted. How would the targeted area be identified and known to the public?
You know, the best word for that would be a hold area.
Would be what?
A hold area.
Oh.
Great example would be the NERSA area that's east or west of 18th Street, kind of by City Park. Douglas Sumner's a great example, as we're working not only through the land bank but the economic development department to identify potential developers. If there's a way that we can grab some of these properties without having to wait for the tax sale process, you know, that's kind of what I've always envisioned, the benefit of having this option of the donations. And there may be something we present in the future. Here's a new designated area. We'd like to hold all the land bank property for this project. However, any donations in there that we could possibly obtain, we will present to you guys. And when we would present that, we would say that this is targeted in this quote-unquote designated area.
Okay. Well, this has been addressed already, the concern about how to establish or whether we even want to accept property where it appears that the person is only donating it to walk away from tax benefits.
And again, any request that we bring to you, you guys still would have the power to vote no, to not accept it. So you know, we're not trying to state this to say that if it meets 1 or 2 now that we're going to change the wording, it's automatically accepted. So again, everything still will come through you guys, and you guys would have the authority to approve or deny those.
Okay. I do recall if we've done 1 or more of these where there was a tax issue, that the particular facts were what really controlled and swayed us one way or the other, so that's good. Other than that, if these things are referred to with alphas or numerics instead of bullet points, that would be great. Thank you.
So I have one more question. Have we accepted property that did not have a clear and marketable title in the past?
We haven't really accepted any houses through the donation process, so I would have to say probably not.
Okay.
And definitely not through the tax sale. Now, we have accepted some donations from like Wells Fargo, or like we just did the Community Stabilization Trust, that did come with marketable title. So yeah, we have, but it's going to be a very specific source of property versus just a private citizen coming and wanting to offer up their property.
Well, I'm glad you are trying to list criteria. I think it would be great if you could provide us with a summary when properties are brought forward to describe which of these categories are fulfilled or with the application. Do we get applications or applications to donate from people who have a lot of land holdings? Or is it mostly just an individual?
When you mean large land holdings, like multiple properties?
Yeah, multiple properties. And they want to get rid of these couple.
Very, very seldom. I mean, generally, it's just kind of a one-off type of deal.
Okay, the only reason I was asking, I was wondering how we could ever really evaluate someone's resources to care for property.
I think that would have to be an interview. We'd probably want to get the codes department involved to see what kind of issues they've maybe had that's prevented them from remedying the situation.
Okay, great, thank you.
So our request for action tonight was to approve the red line portion of this, section 15, and forward to full commission, but it sounds based on our discussion that there are some wording issues that could be addressed, and that there are some considerations for the nuances of some of the points that could also be addressed. And so I guess my question is, would we be better to send this back for a little bit more work, bring it back for next month's committee meeting? Is there an urgency to this that would prevent us from doing that?
No, there's not.
I would make that motion.
So there's a motion and a second to send this back and have Mr. Slaughter address the points that we have brought up here tonight, and to bring a revision forward for our next standing committee meeting. Any further discussion? Any discussion from those in attendance? Roll call, please.
Roll call, Walters.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye. Thank you. We'll look forward to seeing that. And then item number 3 on our committee agenda tonight is for information only.
Actually, Commissioner, before we go to that, I just want to give you an update on the rehab program like we've done the last couple months.
Perfect.
And then we'll segue into that next point.
You just take it from here.
All right, thank you. Okay, we're back to our frequently seen slide, but we're currently sitting at 46 contractors. Because we've added 35 properties from the December sale, finally in our inventory, our total inventory is 112 houses. 20 of those are currently going through the demolition program. Now, 54 in rehab, and again, those are minus the 35 that we're just now starting to board and inspect, and then we'll make our recommendation which go to rehab, which go to demo. But as you can see, 17 rehabs are in the process, 12 we're still waiting to close, and then we have 25 that we'll have to submit to new contractors as they come in, or keep reminding the pool that houses without offer. So I would imagine as we're moving into the spring and summer construction season, we should see that number drop. And we have 9 completed, but 4 have completed in this current year. So we've had 3 new ones, so we're going to touch on that. This is 2819 South 8th Street. This was actually one of our very first properties that we got. And as you can see, there's the before and after. There's kind of an inside of what used to be the kitchen and the new remodeled kitchen. Just what was before and after. Again, here's another bedroom. So some facts on that. This one took a little longer than I think we've been spoiled with some of our other contractors, but it took 10.5 months. In 2017 was appraised at $22,160. It's currently on the market, and they have it listed at $149,900. So that price may come down if offers aren't received, but that's the last information that we received. So hopefully they get that offer, and that would be incredible, but we'll see. Next one is 1314 North 29th Street. And again, before and afters of the front. There's the kitchen, bathroom. Just another, this is the living room, I'm sorry. Some interesting, or some facts on that. 2.5 months to do this one. It was appraised at $9,270, and it's currently listed for $75,000. This is just a little bit shy of kind of where Kensington Park is and State Avenue. And now 616 Elizabeth Avenue, before and after. Again, the conditions before. This wall, I will note, as you can kind of see here, has been removed. So that kind of creates more of that open floor plan there. I love this picture. I mean, this is kind of the condition that we're so used to seeing and hearing and getting phone calls on. And just by them cleaning it out, doing some concrete work here in the back, it's just made a huge difference. They do have access from the alley. So now this took 2.5 minutes, and for this rehabber, that was longer than they're used to doing and performing for us, so they were quite frustrated by that, but we told them it was still acceptable. This was appraised in 17 at $33,100, and it is currently listed for $105,000. So again, 3 more finished properties. Hopefully those initial numbers aren't too alarming, but you know, we're still going, we're getting there. And again, I think we're just seeing the effects of the winter months and the slow downtimes and stuff that's gone with that. So unless there's any other questions just about these, we can segue into the other.
Right before you do that, I'm going to go back on my old soapbox from, I do this every time. You have worked absolute magic.
Yes.
You have absolutely worked magic with these houses, but what distresses me is the number of houses that are going to end up going on the demo list out of these that we have inherited. So I'll go back to my old plea that we find a way to intervene earlier in this slide so that they don't slide all the way to demolition, so that we catch them earlier, and maybe the change of value is not as dramatic, but we lose less to the demo list. That would be where I think we still need to go on this, but you are working, and Mr. Laughlin is going to fill us in.
I have a feeling it was going to steal my thunder, but I'll let him have it. No, go ahead.
Mr. Laughlin.
Tib Laughlin, General Services Director. The donation criteria that you talked about earlier is a key piece of how we intervene earlier. If we start moving, as we're trying to a case management model for our delinquent taxes and intervening in that first year that someone misses their tax payment, we get people where they're dead or they've moved or it's a family member, we can intervene early in the process and get them to donate the house that they can't sell, and we can get it years before these pictures. That's what that donation criteria is critical to us for.
I wanted to echo again what a great program this is. I also agree with you, Commissioner McKiernan, but it's good to know that we have some mechanisms to go from, what was that first one? I'm dying to see the after picture on that first house. On the very first one?
The very first one, yeah. That guy.
Okay, that's the after picture? Or, okay, that's the after picture. Where's the before picture?
Oh, that's the after picture. I'll go back to the side by side. It's a little dark to see here, but you know,
They put a driveway.
no, drive. Actually, an interesting thing on this is this house probably could have been a demolition candidate. This whole side here in the back, which I believe would be the northeast section of the house, had severe termite damage. Foundations was messed up. So again, and maybe that attributed a lot to the 10.5-month time on the rehabilitation. But, you know, one thing that me and Mr. Brockman talk about when he makes his recommendations for demos is it something that still could be saved with the right rehabber? And we're starting to open up to that a little bit to say it may meet the criteria, but who do we know within our pool might have some interest or have a specialty of doing that type of work? We want to try to save everyone that we can, but there's some that where maybe half the house has already collapsed in. And the thing I was going to say before Mr. Laughlin got up here was, you know, again, remember we had what was coined as purgatory. It didn't sell at the tax sale, or somebody didn't come and purchase it, and we just had to wait until the next time we can move it in, which may be 1, 2, 3, or 4 tax sales before. So another year, year and a half, 2 years of it sitting there deteriorating, squatting, holes in the roof, getting rain in it, and just then becoming a severe demo candidate. So, you know, we feel the program is that mechanism, I think that was well said, to get these saved as best we can, and you know, we're just going to keep, you know, moving forward to fulfill that promise. So,
well, it's a good job, and it also, I think, says something about the construction of these older homes in a lot of the other parts of the city, that they are able to rehab, that you're not demoing more. The other thing, I'm just throwing this out there, I'm wondering how these new valuations will impact the existing taxes and value on the rest of the area too.
well, you know, we figured that let's take this house for example. It's been an anchor going the wrong way, which is bringing property values down. And, you know, we've always viewed this program as a way to bring those values up and bring those neighborhood values up. So that's kind of the direction we're going to still keep going.
And we are seeing that impact. Up on Delavan, we had one of our Opportunity Knox houses done, and then the developer, the rehabber who did that for us, got a call from a company that feeds rehab companies' properties, looking for a private transaction to see if they wanted to buy the house across the street, because they'd heard that their house had just been redone, and now the neighbor was looking to sell. And a private company did buy that house across the street and rehabbed it. Now 2 of the 4 houses on that block have been rehabbed. The one neighbor has done significant work on improving his house. Now we just have one problem house left. So we are seeing this actually, the tide raising all the boats.
Until they get the tax bill, maybe, but that's a good direction. You know, everybody wants their value up when they're selling, but.
Right, and we run into complaints on that, but remember, and Chris said that we've only had 4 and it's been slow. We've had 4 done this year. We got 5 done last year. We've already matched last year's results. This program didn't exist until May of last year, when you all had the courage to allow us to start taking houses into the land bank that we had never been able to do before. And that changed everything. We are doing something we have never done in the history of this organization. And we are continuing to expand the tools in our toolbox so we can do more.
That's great for you all. The rehabbers, are they coming from both sides of the river, or how far away do we have them in?
Yeah, a majority of them are from the Kansas City metro area. You know, we get phone calls, emails all the time. We get introduced from various other departments. You know, we've always had inquiries about current demo properties. Is there a way to, going back to the demo thing, is there a way to just get those to the land bank and stuff? And again, the key thing is we can't take a house if it still has an existing note on it or some sort of lien. That's where the tax sales come in place. You know, I felt that it's slowed down, but I kind of worry about that kind of stuff. So, but I think we're just getting out of we're hitting spring, and I think we'll take off, and hopefully a little bit more exposure, a little bit more marketing. One of our goals this year was we really just kind of expose it out there and our door's always open to at least apply to join.
Can a rehabber go, where would a rehabber go to see all of our inventory?
Once they're qualified, then they can see our inventory.
Before that, they can't see it online?
They would have to come and start the process. It's very painless. Me and Charles are very friendly when it comes to that. And if they qualify, then we will expose those addresses to them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again for a great job.
And we do get rehabbers, everyone who goes out and talks about what's going on with SOAR, sooner or later has someone raise that question when they're out in a meeting. How do I get involved in this rehab program? So we get people who, every meeting we go to, every informational thing, you stop and talk to somebody about what's going on, those questions come up. Charles stops when he sees work sites and solicits people to ask them if they're interested in the program. So we are beating the bushes. We have inventory. We have a lot more inventory to come. We believe there are thousands of vacant properties out there that the vacancy registry will turn up, that will eventually flow into this program in one form or another. So we have to have the pool of people to do this work. So we are constantly looking and recruiting.
One last question. Why are we not putting the inventory out to anybody that might want to see it? Is that a safety issue? And only those people who are approved as rehabbers can see them?
It's kind of a selfish reason, just because we're already kind of flooded with enough calls, emails, people coming in the office, about the vacant lot next to their house or across the street. So just to be able, for our limited staff, to be able to still get stuff done, we've just kept it to the rehab pool. Now, we've always said, here's the application to start the process. If you're interested and want to go, please fill this out and we'll fill you in on all the details. And sometimes we get no response, but we get a lot of people that'll come into our office, especially after the tax sale. I like to call them people with jeans and a t-shirt that say, hey, I want some houses to rehab. And we just want to make sure, as part of what we presented when we started this program, as a way to vet these people, to make sure that they're doing what they say they're going to do. And that's why we just, at least now, we're just kind of keeping it a little bit low key.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Just one short question. We have a criteria on how quick we need to turn these houses over through the rehab program. I think I've heard you say 90 days is what you try to turn these over. Is that a timeline you put on them?
I mean, we've never sat down and discussed if, and I don't think I've used that number, but if after 90 days, what do we do with them? I think it's a discussion we might need to have.
Okay.
Again, the last thing we want to do is just be a repository for nicely boarded up houses. But again, the goal is we feel if it's a house we put in the rehab, it's something that someone in our pool can do. But some of them are taking on 2, 3, 4 at a time right now and want to do more, and we're just kind of easing through this and just to make sure that, again, nobody's biting off more than they can chew at this point, and also giving others in the pool the opportunity to still come back and say, okay, I think I'm ready for another one. What do we got?
So we try to expedite that rehab. When we put them in for demolition, is there a time frame on us? Do we have a time frame that if we identify a home from demolition, it could actually sit out there for how long? In the past, it would probably sit for a while. I think now with the funding that the demolition department has received, I think you'll see more houses demoed. So, we're hoping maybe within that 90-day period, once we make that request to them, they can have it down. I'm not an expert on their process, so I don't want to speak for them. But I think, yeah, the ask would be as soon as you can get this down, please get it down for us. Thank you, Mr. Thank you.
Well, just a comment about to your point, Commissioner Townsend. One of the reasons we ask these folks to pre-qualify is to actually give us some protections. I spent 90 minutes with an individual just 2 days ago who wanted houses, but he didn't want to go through our criteria process. And I explained to him, here's why we have this process of pre-qualifications, because you're taking us down a road that the commission says we don't want to go down. And it all revolved around purchasing houses under contract for deed. So we know that experience. I explained that experience to the man, but he didn't seem willing to come and talk with Chris and Charles about getting qualified. He probably could do the work, but I didn't feel comfortable saying, yeah, we're going to turn 20 houses that you can rehab and then turn around and sell contract for deed, given the kinds of horror stories we've heard around the notion of contract for deed. So there's kind of a rhyme to the reason that these guys have, but anybody who wants to get into this business simply needs to qualify, and they can get some work, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. I was wondering if by more publicly putting out there the number of houses that we had, if that might help the turnover. I am 100% in agreement that we need people who are qualified, and I mean, that's a must. I was just wondering why we currently don't have, or the public doesn't have access right now to all of the inventory just to see it. I was thinking that might help and bring more people to the table, but you're right, they absolutely have to be qualified.
We do have our inventory list posted,
Mm-hmm.
so they are out there. They're not specified or marked different. Someone would have to sort through the land use codes to find them. But
Posted.
on the land bank website, if you go to our page and then properties or inventory, I think it's either marked one or the other. Or we do have our inventory list for sale, and then we also have our what we call a hold list, like kind of what we talked about earlier, some areas where we're holding property right now, whether it's for the unified government or for a current development project, and also including our houses. So it's out there. You know, we'll definitely consider putting a specified list for the rehab program in there. I agree with you. I think it will generate some interest. I just want to make sure that as staff, we're able to handle that demand and hopefully it's more than just somebody needing some questions answered and then they hang up the phone, don't answer an email or walk out and we don't see them again. You know, we're just trying to attack the areas where these contractors and rehabbers are to hopefully bring those hopefully qualified people in. A lot of our rehabbers have recommended their friends and colleagues that work, and they're now starting to put in their applications or get qualified. That'll be available for this next round of open houses and stuff. So, you know, if there's better ways to do it, we're always all ears for that.
Well, don't want you overwhelmed, so that's fine and won't qualify.
And the project has been evolving very quickly, and the way we drive solicitations is through an open house program. So we don't just have the list sitting out there and it's come talk to us about it. As they come on, Chris and Chuck do open houses, and the qualified pool, the pool of rehabbers can come see the houses. So they see them as we get them ready. It doesn't do us a whole lot of good to have someone come calling about a house that we haven't even had a chance for Chuck to go out and walk through yet. So, but as we evolve, we may put yours in there and then you'll get your nickel every time we use that idea.
Thank you.
Commissioner Townsend, I just wanted to expand on this. So, you know, Chris will give a list of qualified, or list of homes to qualified contractors, and all they can do is drive by. They have to call me, I'll meet them out there, they have to sign a waiver, hold harmless, to even get into the property. So we're trying to protect our assets, and so it's, you know, safe, because we don't want somebody going in there and, you know, just doing whatever and try to sue us. We don't want that. So even the other contractors have to sign a hold harmless.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So I think we can go ahead and move forward to the third item.
Thank you. The final thing we have tonight is, as we've talked, and you've heard plenty through the SOAR updates and stuff about the boardings that are starting to take place. We have developed what we feel is at least the land bank standard of how we're boarding these properties. And also we wanted to share kind of what also Mr. Brockman does as we go through the rehab process of our hands-on with our rehabbers. We like to tell them as they come on, consider us your partner in this. And part of what Mr. Brockman, and he'll touch on that here shortly, is you know, how can we help you get through our inspection process? Not sidestep it, but how can we help you get through so you pass with flying colors? Because once they're successful, then the rehab program stays successful. So I'll just start off by saying we've seen these properties. In fact, this is one of the ones we just showed you, but we'll use this as our, for our presentation, kind of our demo. But you guys have all seen these throughout your areas and districts. The old way of boarding it up, just throw some plywood over there, screw some screws in there, and go on to the next one. It works to an extent. It's not foolproof. And here's kind of the back view of that. But when we started this process, and I believe through a meeting with some SOAR people, there was this idea of how do we improve, how do we present these to where they're a little bit more attractive to the eye. They're not so much that anchor that's further taking down the values of the neighborhoods and stuff. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Brockman. He's pretty much the guy that gets down and dirty with these. And here we go.
Good evening, Commissioners. So basically, once the land bank takes possession of a property, I'll get all the contractors, send out an email saying that we're going to meet at a property and we're going to do a boarding plan. So that means not only boarding it how we want it, it may, you know, in some cases have a metal frame so we can't rightly do a carriage bolt. We may have to anchor it to the concrete. If the roof is tore up, we'll have it tarped. If there's debris out there, we'll have them clean it up. So we make a boarding plan, and at the same time, I do an assessment of the property exterior, because we have not gone in there yet. So what I'll do is I'll put that out for bids, give them a week. Bids come in, we go over them, we award them, and then I send out an email and I send memos to Chris and the director stating these are the ones that have won, this is the amount, and we're going to move forward with boarding. So I'll meet them out there, we will open the structure, and they will immediately start boarding the first house. So if there's 2 houses, let's just say, the boarding contractor will meet us out there, his crew will start boarding, I will enter the house. However, we may have to knock the door down. It just kind of depends on how we can get in. And then I do a full inspection, the foundation, everything. And we do an assessment. At that point, I will know if we'll either go into the rehab program or demo. Some cases, it's too dangerous to go in. Then I send a memo to Chris stating that this should be recommended for demo. Now, to answer your question, Commissioner, a lot of times we've had maybe a half a dozen houses that should have been demoed, and out of that, I think 2 were saved. I mean, foundations blown out, back wall knocked down, but a contractor took it, and it's actually under rehab right now on Roswell. So we are going that extra mile to try to do this. So now it's in the rehab program. So then Chris touched on the open houses. So we'll do open houses. We'll have contractors come by. We open the house for 30 minutes. Whoever shows up can go in and do their assessment of what needs to be if they want to bid on it. So this is some of the types of boarding we do. We don't, like Chris said, we don't just throw up screws. I mean, we're securing not only a property, but we're securing our investment for the contractor. We don't want anybody getting in there. So we do windows, we save windows, double hung windows, we make sure that they're down, and then we can put the boarding up. The one on the left is actually that boarding there on the right. We build our doors, I'm sorry. Yeah, we board the, well, I can go back. Okay, so we have stiff backs, those 2x4x8s right there. Those are with carriage bolts, so they're locked down tight. You can't rattle the wood and try to get it. If the window's over 50 inches, we add another one in the middle, or two. It just kind of depends on the type of window for extra security. We build a door different in that style out of 2x4 and 3/4 plywood and 1x6. These hinges are, you cannot take the pin out. You can't knock it up, and these are, you can't get them out. This is what our first door looked like, and that's the hasp. We recently, in your pamphlet, you saw the barrel bolt. That's what we're doing now. We're using the barrel bolt versus that right there.
And this is a big change.
Yeah.
We used to screw those doors closed, so if we needed to get back inside the house, Charles had to call a contractor to come unscrew the door. Now we treat it just like a piece of real estate we may be showing. It's got a lock, we can open it, we can go out and show it as many times as people want to get in, instead of us being charged every time we need to open the door. Seems small, it's a huge improvement.
And if some properties are screwed down, depending on how it is, I have tools, I open it so we don't have to go get a contractor and spend $50. So I'll just meet them out there and do that. Large openings, garage door, that's what it'll look like. This is the finished product, final boarding. And we have our no trespassing sign. You can't see it, but we have our Wyandotte County Land Bank Rehab Program sign.
Another small innovation, but we didn't used to put those signs out. We didn't have houses. Chris got those yard signs. They make a difference. They tell the neighbors we're involved, there's something going on, and who to call if they have questions. We did not do that in the past.
Yeah, and then like Chris mentioned earlier, or Tim may have, we paint ours. We don't just slap it up there, look like, we don't want to do that. So, yeah, I was going. So in this case, it's also painted Navajo white. That's our color. And then in this one, along with the boarding plan, we have extra tasks. Like I said, the trash, you may have to tarp. If you can see the two tarps there on the left, so they've done extra tasks. There was garbage in front, so that's all been taken care of. It's tarp, it's setting ready for an open house. So then it goes through the open houses, and we have 4 inspections I do on every house. I do an initial inspection, which means all of the garbage is taken out. It's cleaned up, and then I look at the floor plan that they submit and their projections on how they're going to redo this house. So as an example, we may get in there and we get up in the attic and there's knob and tube. There's no way we're going to keep knob and tube. You're going to need to put brand new electrical in it. Or if they're deciding in the time that, hey, I don't want to move that wall, I just want to open it up, so we'll do an addendum to the floor plan, and I'll submit it to Chris, and it'll go to the file. So when I do a final inspection, I can look at that and make sure it's completed correctly. So that's the initial. And then we do a rough-in. Well, that's the initial. Then we do a rough-in. Basically, the building inspections department has passed their rough-in, which is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. Okay, so I want to make sure that the electrical is actually completed the way that we told them to. The rough-in plumbing, there's several other things in rough-in. The new framing of the walls, ceiling, floor, joists, rafters, and stairs are in the process of almost being completed. Exterior windows, roof, siding, soffit. So they're in the process of getting about 2/3 of the way through. And then I'll do a progress inspection, which means they have their windows in, they're redoing the sheetrock, they're setting their mechanical, they're maybe setting their kitchen cabinets and things. The roof is completed. So I go all through, and make sure that's all done according to our land bank standards. And then they're on the left, they're putting in the kitchen cabinets. On the right, they're getting ready to put in their heater vents and paint. And so then after it's done, we do a final. building inspections has passed their final inspection, and then they start cleaning up and doing a little touch-ups and things like that, and then they call me, and I go in there and I do a final inspection, and I find anything that I have noted, like if the wall downstairs, the stone isn't tuck pointed and sealed, they need to get that done before we pass it, or you need to have this done or that done, and then I'll do a final inspection, pass it, and then I send a memo to Chris and state that this house has passed land bank, it's ready to be deeded. And any questions?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment that I have seen how this process really is very beneficial in the neighborhood. I had one particular house that we had boarded the old way. And of course, those boards didn't defeat the very determined people who wanted to get inside that house and stay there. And so when the woman who lives next door said, I see people going in and out still, we got police department involved, and they've arrested 2 people in that house the following day. With the new boarding procedure, that house has been secured, and there's been no, it looks better. First of all, that white rather than the brown plywood looks much better, and there's been no complaints and no traffic in and out of that house since. So I've seen firsthand how it can be beneficial in terms of not only the look, but the safety of the neighborhood.
I just want to add, that's not a rehab house that he's talking about, but I know exactly the one you're talking about. But again, I think through the codes department, they've seen kind of what we're doing out there, and they see how affected it's been. And I would want to say that that's the sole reason they're kind of starting to model their program after ours. But you know, we do take pride that something that we kind of helped create and start is now really catching on, and you are seeing those benefits.
You're a trendsetter.
Well.
Commissioner Townsend.
Just a comment also, I've seen firsthand the boarding process, and it did make that house look better. It made it more secure, and the signs that identify the particular property as rehab property, I think did add something to the value of it. So I appreciate those touches.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Slaughter, Mr. Brockman, or Mr. Laughlin? Gentlemen, thank you very much for your work. We appreciate the update and your continuing work. There is no other business before this committee, so we are adjourned. Let's take about 2 to 3 minutes to get all the people who need to be here for the next place, and then we will start that committee shortly.
Development Finance Committee. We want to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Economic Development Finance Standing Committee. Public comment is welcome. Anyone wishing to speak on any item of the Standing Committee agenda may do so when the item is up for discussion. You will have 5 minutes to state your comments. Please come forward to the microphone at that time and you will be recognized. For accurate recording purposes, we ask all present to speak directly into a microphone. With that, we'll go to roll call.
Roll call. Bryant.
Here.
Walters.
Here.
Murguia. Townsend.
Here?
McKiernan.
Here.
Burrows.
Here. With no revisions to the agenda this evening, we'll move right on to the approval of minutes.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Seeing none, minutes are approved. Item number 1, First item up this evening is resolution amend the master equipment lease purchase agreement with the Bank of America. And this is for information. And so I'm assuming Kathleen will be making the presentation this evening?
Actually, I'll be doing the, Debbie Johnsher, Deputy Chief Financial Officer. I'll be doing the master lease agreement. And this does require action, approval of the resolution to be forwarded on to the full commission. This is our annual master equipment lease agreement. This is a tool that's used to finance all of our equipment that's approved in the CMIP. There are 3 items listed.
Hang on just one second. So we are getting a little bit sorted out here. In the original agenda, this item is marked for information only. The request for action does actually identify approving a resolution. So we're just getting that sorted out here. The original agenda front page.
My agenda says information.
Oh, forthcoming. Yeah. It's not for information only.
Okay.
All right.
Where is that information?
There should have,
What you're going to give us?
right, there should have been a blue sheet that came last week that had the information.
I didn't receive a blue sheet.
I don't remember seeing a blue sheet.
Okay, I can provide copies of the information that I'm gonna go over.
Okay, well, let's, if you can provide that, let's just go ahead and continue with the presentation. We'll move on, see what kind of action we need to take this evening. And we'll, do you mind if we stop and ask questions as we move through the presentation?
Sure.
Wonderful.
So the, included in your packet, there would have been 3 items. There would have been an amendment from Bank of America. This amendment extends the agreement from, the current agreement expired as of December 2017. So this amendment would extend the agreement for another year through December 31st, 2018. Also included was an update to the pricing formula that was included in the agreement. The second item listed would have been a list of all the equipment that could potentially be financed in 2018. Those would have all been items approved in the CMIP, and some of them could have been carryover for items from 2017 that didn't get financed before the end of the year. And the third item would have been a resolution authorizing the amendment, and that would have, all of those items would have been included together.
You have a copy of the items that to be purchased?
I have my copy. I don't have individual copies.
Are they extensive?
Okay, so the reason they're not in your packet is because there was, prior to the deadline, there was a delay. Some language was still needing to be worked out because the federal tax law required that we add some language to the agreement, and so we were waiting on that from our bond counsel, and then it just got failed to get added to the packet. That's what I'm thinking. Do you have?
Yeah, my understanding was that information was provided to the clerk last week.
Oh, it was?
So I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah, well, it needs to,
We would prefer to have it approved, because all of these items, there are items that are, if they're on the list, the department could be in the process of purchasing those items now.
but it probably could wait another month, right?
We could probably push it to the April meeting if we need to.
Given the confusion, I guess I just would maybe make the suggestion that maybe this gets held over a month, so we can get the attachments here, make sure everybody's reviewed it, and bring it back. Yep.
Are we allowed to call a special meeting? As public notice, do we have a time frame to call a public meeting if we wanted to meet in 2 weeks and look at this issue again and make approval? Can we do that collectively as a body?
I'm assuming so, yes.
Or we could advance it to the full commission.
We have a couple of different options we could do to try to get this moving along.
Okay.
Take it to the.
What would be, Commissioner Townsend?
You could fast track it after the next meeting. So, you know, instead of normally there's the lag, but you could put it on the next full commission after the next meeting and fast track it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if it's been stated already, this committee could see it next month without any jeopardy, that's what I would recommend we do. I think it's supposed to come to this committee. We should have the opportunity to see it. I'm not sure why, you know, this background information isn't getting in the packets when the agenda is approved. And I think that would keep down some of the confusion about when and where these things are. Because Ms. Johnson always has a good presentation, but I've seen lately with some of the financial things, we're not getting the supports, and that's not fair to our financial team. It's not fair for us to do it. So I would recommend that we just hold this over, send it for next month when we have a chance to look at everything.
Second.
There's been a,
Again, it wasn't included in the packet because we were waiting on our bond counsel to write the language so that we could put it into the contract. So it got delayed. That's why that deadline wasn't met.
So could we have it, you said we could bring it to our next committee meeting, and then with a request that the approval with it be fast-tracked to the commission meeting immediately following that, which would cut about 2 weeks off of total time to completion by full commission.
right.
Correct.
Okay, so we're talking 6 weeks total?
Roughly.
Yeah. I don't think that should be a problem. So.
Well, there's been a motion and a second. Does anybody need a motion restated? All right. Motion been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, okay.
Roll call. Bryant?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Townsend?
Aye.
McKiernan?
Aye.
Burrows?
Aye. Apologize, just a little bit different than from where I come from. Okay. That's first order of business. Next order of business, item number 2, fourth quarter fiscal year 2017 budget versus actual. And
And a handout.
Kathleen, will you be making this presentation?
I'm going to start it, and then we're going to pass it on to Reginald Lindsay,
All right.
our budget director.
Great, thank you.
So Reginald is passing out the fourth quarter budget versus actual report which is through December 31st, 2017. And typically we have this report prepared and included as part of your committee packet. But for this fourth quarter, we held off because we were looking to close the books and do all the year-end entries and that we possibly could, so that we could give you the most accurate and, you know, germane information. So we're going to start out. I'm going to take the first few slides with the overview slide, and then I'm going to talk about the revenue side, and then Reginald Lindsay is going to pick up on the expenditure side. All right. Now, this report focuses on the general fund. The very last page of the report, which we submit and we put on our website also, by the way, the very last page of the report also provides budget versus actual for all of the unified government's other certified funds. All right. But we're gonna focus on the general fund tonight, and so here we have just a big overview with the revenues, expenditures, a net allocation of transfers, and then how much came in versus went out is the net change, and how that impacts the fund balance. This presentation tonight is based on the Kansas cash basis law, which is an accounting approach which really takes, you know, money coming in, money going out without having any kind of adjusting accounting entries related to receivables or accruals or that sort of thing, all right? So just so you know, this is very much money going in, money going out from January to December. So the far right-hand 3 columns is the 2017 year, and we've provided 16 so it can provide you a little context and some comparative information. So in 17, we budgeted $204,000. This includes all 3 general funds, the city, the county general fund, and the Consolidated Parks and Recreation Fund. So we budgeted that we were going to collect $204 million, and what we actually collected was $207 million, which is about 1.7% more than we budgeted. On the expenditure side, we expected to, or we appropriated $205.7 million, and then we only spent $199 million, which is roughly 3.5% or 3.3% less than what we budgeted. And then this is this is basically the difference between transfers in and transfers out. And so that's what those are. And so as a result, when we passed our amended 2017 budget, we were expecting to use a little bit of fund balance, $758,000 worth. But what actually happened is that we have a net increase to our fund balance of $7.052 million. And that's because we brought in roughly $3.5 million in revenue that we weren't anticipating, and then we spent roughly $3.5 million less than we budgeted. And so this is pretty good news. What happens is our fund balance improves from which on a cash basis, improves from $19.3 million at the beginning of the year, and ends with $26.3 million at the end of the year. So during our upcoming budget retreat, which is happening this Wednesday night, the focus of some of our discussion will be on this additional $7 million that, or the $7 million that we are adding to the fund balance at the end of December of last year. For comparative purposes, you can see last year there was $192 million in revenues compared with $192 in expenditures, and then a net transfers out of $2.3 million. Now, why is that number so much lower than this new 2017 year? Well, that's because our STAR bonds came in. That's a big part of it. Roughly $9.3 million in STAR bonds were recorded to have been collected in 2017. That was that new money that we brought in. Now, we talk a lot about the STAR bonds, and everyone thinks it's $12 million. The general fund gets about 9.5 or 9.4 million of the STAR bond revenue. The rest of it, the other $3 million, is actually being deposited to the dedicated sales tax fund and to the EMS fund. So that's good news. Let's take a look at why that happened, at least on the revenue side. So we're taking a look at the budget versus actual, and then this graph shows how the 2017 expenditures compared with 2016. Okay. So we start out with the city general fund, and then we'll talk about the county general fund. So the city general fund, we were expecting to collect $141.8 million in revenue, and what we collected was $143.9 million. So that's a net increase on the general fund side of $2 million. Where did that extra $2 million come from? Well, property tax did not come in as we expected as I budgeted in the city general fund. And that's because I was overly optimistic in the delinquency rate that I was anticipating. So when I was budgeting for the property tax, I was hoping that our delinquency rate would drop from 7 to 5 or 6 to 5%. Unfortunately, the delinquency rate for our property taxpayers within KCK came in at 7%. So we didn't collect quite as much as I had anticipated. So it doesn't have anything to do with valuation, or it just has to do with the payment rate and the level of payment received. On the sales tax side, you can see that the sales tax increased by about $1.2 million over what I budgeted. And what that is that we took a look at the use tax. So there's sales and use tax. And the interesting thing is that the use tax went up significantly in 17, and we believe that's due to the increase in online sales. And so that's something that we did not anticipate. The other situation that is within this other third category, other taxes. Now I had it budgeted at $49.7 million, and it came in at $50.8 million. Now there's a lot in there. There's franchise taxes, that pilot, and so forth. But also what's in there is motor vehicle registration. So I anticipated that the motor vehicle registration would be conservatively low. But what actually was collected was very, well, it was interesting, because we think that the collections were a good 25% greater than I anticipated. And part of it is a combination of additional car sales, or the value of the vehicles that are being registered was greater than anticipated. So we're assuming more, greater car sales. And secondly, we think that it's because of improved enforcement efforts within the sheriff department. So, and that's brought on by a couple of new personnel that they brought on who are a little bit more, I don't know. Gung-ho. Gung-ho, okay. Thank you. Tag enforcement efforts in the sheriff's department. Now, the other reason that number is higher is because I think I was a little conservative on the amount that we were going to collect from the BPU on the electric pilot. So the BPU increased their electric rates last year, and in the prior years, the revenue flow from the BPU pilot had been pretty flat. So it was difficult to really know or gauge how much that rate increase was going to impact our pilot payments. So, but they came in a little higher than I had anticipated. Now, there are some reductions in some other areas that, for example, charges for services are down about $300,000, and fines and forfeitures are down roughly another $200,000 or $300,000 from what I budgeted. And several of those are related to our municipal court collections. Those collections have been declining slightly based on new policies. So, but overall, if you're comparing with 2016 actuals, you'll see that our property tax collection, the blue is last year, or 2016, and the red is 2017. So you'll see that the property tax collection is slightly below 2016, or relatively flat, and that's because in 2017 we reduced property tax mills by 2 mills, right? It's also, so that's why it's pretty flat. Sales tax is a little bit up. Other taxes is also a little bit up. Those other categories are down from the prior year. Permits and licenses intergovernmental revenue. So, and then these other categories are not as big, so.
Yeah, I have a question, Kathleen. The miscellaneous and transfers in, where does that money come from?
Well, so in the budget document, it outlines all the various transfers. But they come from other city funds, different city funds for different purposes. So it's kind of a list of probably 8 or 9.
So I have a question. When we have these tax sales, we always get these memos that we collect millions of dollars in proceeds from these tax sales. Now, where does that money go?
That gets deposited in the delinquent tax revenue line, and then it also, where else does it go? Do you know offhand? Yeah, I think that's where it is. And so that category is actually listed under other taxes. And I can provide you more detail of that.
Okay, so all the proceeds from that, they do appear on this table probably in line 3?
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Kathleen, not to strike a nerve on this, but on the other tax, which includes a pilot and the unexpected bonanza from the rate increase from the BPU, I would just make the comment that it would be nice to see the potential of the pilot rate going down. I know that there had been discussion of that in the past, and it just kind of set at the same rate, and it would be nice to see it drop a point or two to kind of offset that increase that came from us, so that it just overall helps our citizens.
So,
well, if I could make that motion, I would make that motion.
So during our budget retreat on Wednesday, one of the budget initiatives that we'll have on the menu of items for you to discuss and consider in your small groups exercise will be that item, so.
Good. I look forward to hearing the results.
A portion of the increase in, due to the BPU rate increase, is dedicated for debt service on the Leavenworth Road project, just so you know.
Would that help offset some of the BPU's costs at the?
Yes.
At the?
Yes.
Leavenworth roadside?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so next, the next is the same slide, only it's the county. The county's total revenues were budgeted at $58 million, and we collected 59.76, but roughly $59.8 million. So that was an additional $1.8 million above what we anticipated. And honestly, the metrics for the are very similar as with the city general fund. Except just about 1/3 of what they are on the city side. So, again, property taxes were not quite at the level that I had anticipated. They're not as low, because actually the property taxpayers on the county side were, their delinquency rate was more around the 4 to 5% rate, not 7. So, curious, so. Sales tax, same metric. Other taxes is similar. So really not a lot of big difference here on the county side.
So just a comment or a question. So it just looks like on the county side, we could have had a 9 mil reduction and not affected our balance.
Okay, well, so the mill reductions that have been adopted by the commission have been on the city side.
I know.
Oh, okay.
I was just saying on the county side, for example, you have a $9 million increase.
No, there's a difference of $1.9 million.
$1.9 million per mill on the county side?
No, the unanticipated increase in our revenue totaled $1.9 million. 1 mil on the county side equals 1
Oh,
million.
this chart that I'm looking at here is not the same as the one you have here. I'm sorry. I'm looking, my apologies.
Which chart are you looking at?
He's looking in the quarterly.
Yeah, I guess you,
Okay, well,
this doesn't follow your presentation?
yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Oh, I'm on the whole wrong sheet.
But what were you looking at? I mean,
I was looking at the city general fund revenues, but I'll get on the right page here in a moment. County general fund was only $1.7 million increase,
yeah,
less
it's,
than 2 mils.
so 59.8 less the 58 million is 1.7 or $8 million. So,
Gotcha.
you know, 1 mil equals $1 million. And it's pretty much, I mean, it's a little bit more on the county side, a little more than $1 million, but it's not worth,
Okay.
it's $1 million.
So it's less than 2 mils
That's right.
we could have cut.
Okay, now we're gonna talk about expenditures, and I'm handing this over to Reginald Lindsay.
Thank you, Kathleen. On the city general side, we had a $3 million savings. We came in $3 million under the budget. Part of that savings, $1.5 million is in our services, and then $1 million is in our capital outlay, and then there's another $500,000 in our grants and claims. In the services, $1.5 million is made up from savings from attorney fees, also labor negotiation savings, and then also the Affordable Health Care Act savings that we had savings in this year. Also over in grants and claims, we had savings in settlements that we did not have to pay out. Also, we had settlements in taxes that we pay on our own properties. And then other savings that we had were in our supplies and commodities, which consisted of the fuel savings of $125,000 and clothing savings for policemen, and then also natural gas savings. On the county general side, we had savings of $866,000. That savings is made up of services. We had the savings there, but we also went over in our personnel. We went over in overtime, and also retirement rates ended up being a little more than we expected. Also, in services, our savings were in our inmate housing and in our inmate medical. Also, we had savings in grants and claims, which was kind of the same on the city side. We had savings as far as we did not, our legal fees ended up being lower than expected, so we had less settlements that we had to pay out for. Those were kind of how the county and the city general fund ended up on the expenditure side. Any questions about any of those?
Good evening, Mr. Lindsay. On the county general fund side, personnel, you said was, the actuals were a little bit higher than the budgeted.
Yes.
And you said that was due in part to retirements?
So our retirement rate that we have to pay the capers, as far as, we kind of underestimated what the cost would be on those.
Oh, okay.
And then also overtime was a little more than we expected.
Okay. The overtime, I would follow that. It was the retirement, and I'm thinking about people leaving.
So what, pension costs.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So with capers, when folks retire, we end up having to make payments, special payments to capers in order to catch up the amount of their liability, what their liability is compared with what their account is reflecting. They end up sending us a bill where we have to catch them up, and the disconnect comes because we're ending up having to pay out accrued sick leave and vacation, and that adds to their time. So that's why sometimes it's a little hard to predict. And we're gonna have more information on this at the retreat too. I wanted to, yeah. Do you have any more questions? Happy to talk further about these items.
Well, any questions from the members?
Okay, yeah.
I want to state it's nice to be in a positive position, but at the same time, it looks like the budget challenge that we'll have Wednesday evening will dictate as to some of the questions and concerns have been issued here tonight. So, Kathy, thank you. Any other questions?
I think Reggie has one more slide.
Next slide covers all the rest of our funds, which also includes the city general fund and the county general fund. On the left-hand side of the revenues, and then on the right-hand side of the expenditures. So it lists all the tax levy funds at the top of the page here, and then all the other funds at the lower half of the page.
I wanted to point out just one small thing. In order to read this, in order to do these tables so that they're a little easier to read, the front part of the document does not include the $10 or so million in annual debt appropriation that we appropriate on the revenue and expenditure side in the city general fund. We took that out because it just makes the table comparisons really confusing, but it is reflected in the top line of this last page. So just wanted to point out, that's why it's roughly 10 million more than what you'll see on the other pages, the city general fund. Yeah, and they know what that is. I could explain that a little bit more when offline with you, Commissioner Burrows, okay? Okay.
I'm trying to read, add, and listen at the same time. Sometimes that just doesn't click. So, in total, we are sitting at, looks like 101.6%, all funds.
On the revenue side, yes.
The revenue side.
Mm-hmm.
And we've reduced expenditures. I commend you for that. That's prudent budgeting.
I might make a comment. I've been giving this some thought. We had a little bit of a conversation shortly, a few weeks ago. Kathleen has made her thoughts known to us. I guess from the high altitude look at it, if you look at it and say, we made a commitment to the taxpayers that we could operate their government if they gave us a certain amount of money. And through everybody's best efforts, we collect that from a whole bunch of different sources. But if we accidentally collect more than we asked for, what do we do with that money? Do we give it back to them? That's a little tedious. Do we, as Kathleen suggested, do we put it in the bank and save it for a rainy day? Do we pay down our debt with it? Those are some of the options that we have, and I would really like to have that discussion Wednesday night. I'm just talking about the surplus revenues. Now, maybe we can talk separately about savings from operations. That we told them we were going to spend all this money. We didn't have to spend it all. Maybe we do something else with that money, separate from the surplus collections. But we are on this trend, as we have been for several years, of always having more revenue than budgeted and always having lower expenditures than budgeted, which has restored our fund balances. That's and as Tom says, that's a good thing. That's a positive from our standpoint. But I would really like to put on our taxpayer hat for a moment and just say, let's look at it from the other side and say, what should we do when we essentially overcharge people or take more money from them than we told them we would? But through nobody's fault. I mean, it just sales tax collections, whatever it is, it's an art and a science, but and we've been very prudent, but it'd be worthwhile to have that kind of discussion, I think, Wednesday night.
I think there's a number of us going to welcome that discussion. There's been commitments made to the citizens that at the same time we are responsible for providing services. And I like to think that as a city of the first class, that when we roll out these services, they're professional services and services that are utilized properly and presented properly to the public. And I don't disagree with you. We had the comment about the pilot and continued progress within our community. Those will be discussions, and I anticipate a lively discussion for the Budget Committee Wednesday. So I appreciate that. I really do. Any other discussion? Any other comments? Thank you, Commissioner Walters. Seeing none, thank you for the presentation. We will see you Wednesday evening. Next on the seeing that there's no action taken, this was for information purposes only. So that ends the items for discussion. We do have a public agenda. I don't have anything under the public agenda that I'm aware of. Seeing none, entertain a motion for adjournment.
Moved.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Meeting's adjourned.